Good evening. I'm nervous, but I think it'll work out. My name is Amadou. I'm a Greenhouse Scholar alumni. I'm a proud member of the class of 2019, and more importantly, I'm a Georgia Scholar. So shout out to all. So in our lives, we have identities and themes that shape them, that define our journeys. As Greenhouse Scholars in particular, there are many themes that we have in common. Today, I want to discuss some of those themes and how they have curated my life story. The first theme that I want to discuss is achievement through education. There's no secret that all the scholars in this room, they're rock stars. We get it done in the classroom. While service outside of the classroom is pertinent, I think academic success can translate into skill sets that allow you to serve communities beyond the classroom. If anything, we are information seekers who search for ways to not only improve our personal situations, but the situations of many underrepresented students throughout America. Access to such information can bridge the gaps, especially given our various backgrounds. Now, whenever I walk into a room, outside, wherever, I bring my community in that room with me. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And when I say Atlanta, I'm from Zone 1 and Zone 4. Jesse has actually lived in my neighborhood, so I got love for him. And I mention that because when you visit Atlanta, there are two types of Atlanta. You have Buckhead on one end of the spectrum, and then you have Bankhead on the other. And I was on the other side of that. Malcolm X once said that education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. In my journey, I have been fortunate enough to have opportunities that allow me to level the playing field. In high school, I was a part of the inaugural cohort of a program called Project Engages, which allowed me to conduct scientific research on tissue regeneration and vascular remodeling. Now, my research distinguished me from other students hoping to enter college. I mean, it is rare to see a kid from the projects discover 3 potential therapies on how to treat atherosclerosis. As I stand here today, I'm proud to say that I am officially a Stanford University alumni. Go Cardinals. Furthermore, I'm proud to stand here as the first person in my family to actually graduate from college. So even though Stanford is a prestigious institution in the heart of Silicon Valley, I think I'm most proud of winning the game despite the hand that was dealt to me. Today, consider the game to be metaphorical for a life full of barriers. For many of us here today, the theme of resilience has been one of the most recurring themes throughout our lives. For my folks intrigued by numbers, data suggests that the southern region where I was raised is a dead end for people trying to escape poverty. In my hometown city of Atlanta, children born in the bottom 20% of the income distribution have a 4.5% chance of making it to the top 20%. As startling as this statistic may be, this is not a surprise to me. Growing up on the west side of Atlanta, this statistic was both my reality and my experience. You would assume that students go to school to learn. That's a fair assumption. At my high school, there was a significant portion of kids who went to school just to solely eat lunch. And I'm saying this because I want people to have more of a perspective. Think about why people from the bottom, why they behave a certain type of way or why their conditions are a certain way. When you have children coming to school just to eat lunch, that changes your perspective. There are things going on at home that people should pay attention to. It would make sense for school to be a safe haven. But you know, in America that we live in today, even outside of my community, we see the school shootings. The crime rate in my zip code is 4 times the national average. And like I said before, I'm not having this conversation, or I don't want to have this speech to talk about a cliche low-income story, because it's not. But I'm giving you insight on how tough it is for certain kids to escape poverty. I'm giving you reasons why escaping poverty was a dead end for many children in Atlanta. My peers and I have been dealt a rough deck of cards. Now, whether that manifested itself in the form of a single-parent household, food deserts, under-resourced schools, school-to-prison pipeline, drugs, etc., many won't win the game. Many of my friends have been consumed by trauma and eagerness to make quick money to feed their families. Eventually, some become incarcerated, or some lose their lives due to certain lifestyle. This cycle has been perpetual, but there is still hope, and education can level that playing field. Communities like Greenhouse Scholars can change the game and have lasting positive change. Programs like Greenhouse Scholars are investing in the education of high-achieving individuals that come from areas like ours, that's to the scholars, and like mine. In my case, DIVA, a group of close college friends from Atlanta, sponsored me in the program. Additionally, Greenhouse matches you with a mentor that guides you in your decision-making process throughout your college journey. Now, when I speak of Greenhouse, my favorite thing, my favorite component has been that mentorship aspect. I never talk about Greenhouse without saluting Stockton Croft. Stockton has been a father figure who has put his money where his mouth is, not only for me, but also my best friend who is not a Greenhouse Scholar. Stockton inspired me to enter the financial industry. He also inspired me to always uplift others on the way to the top. Stockton will have bi-weekly phone calls with me to stay up to date about my academic, personal, and professional life. Furthermore, Stockton welcomed me into his home, and I was able to make connections with his kids too. In addition to pairing me with an excellent mentor, Greenhouse Scholars is the reason why I'll be working as an investment banking analyst at North Point Advisors in San Francisco. Now, so Scott Burridge actually gets a special shout out. He reached out to Matt Kelly, who actually is a mentor within Greenhouse Scholars also. And now you have a kid from the projects on trajectory to make almost 4 times or fourfold as much as my parents. So earlier, I mentioned the stat about upward mobility and escaping poverty. And because of my educational journey and because of my relationships within Greenhouse Scholars, escaping poverty is not a dead end. I'll actually be able to open the doors for many people that do come from my community. So previously, I mentioned my plans to start working at North Point Advisors this fall, but people don't understand the significance of entering such an industry. I mean, within this industry, you learn about valuations, how to value companies. You learn why companies decide to merge. You learn about consolidations, acquisitions. You learn about the handling of capital. And that was something that was very lackluster within my community. A lot of people don't know how to handle capital. And what I do know is that there's not enough young black men within that space. So my presence within this industry will be a voice at the table for the underrepresented. For me, winning the game meant more than graduation. Winning the game meant breaking that cycle of poverty that was present not only within my family's life, but many families within my community. Winning the game meant setting myself up to launch the Baugh Foundation. The Baugh Foundation would serve as a leadership development pipeline to equip young black students with skills to enter competitive markets, and it will also fund the construction of schools and clinics in remote areas throughout the West African nation of Guinea. So people don't recognize that we have jewels that come from our community. Our community is filled with love, with intellect, with diversity, with so much that people think that we don't have. So to end it all off, as you go on to run the Googles, Apples, the banks, the cities, the states, the countries, the sports teams, nonprofits, the Fashion Novas, etc., think about your purpose. If your fight is against the housing crisis and gentrification, use your education to go back and buy back your block. Zone 1, here I come. If your fight is against violence, start a nonprofit that gets children off the streets. If your fight is against not making a livable wage, teach the poor how to invest. Teach people how to make disposable income in a legal way. And there are so many ways to do it. If your fight is against police brutality and inequalities in the justice system, be the policymaker that is needed. Be the judge. Be the attorney that brings justice. Be the fight. Be the voice in your room for what you represent. Make it worth it that someone gave up their seat so that you could sit in it today. Lastly, never forget where you came from, but never let that hold you back from where you want to go. Thank you.